me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Possibly. All right, let's continue here. Here's New York Times. Study is unsure on tainted polio vaccine cancer role. The government's own reports in the 70s say hundreds of millions got it, 100 million contracted cancers, and many of them didn't survive it. Look at that whitewash out of the New York Times. Let's continue here with some of these articles. There's the Times of London. Smallpox vaccine triggered AIDS virus. AIDS epidemic triggered by smallpox vaccine. Times of London. In fact, you can actually document cam and zoom in right here on the actual scan of the Times of London right there for everybody. Oh, yeah, it came out under a Navy study. They shot up gay people in New York with it to then, because they knew they were having hundreds of sexual partners, they would spread it, a great vector. Very cold-blooded. You know, like fleas would be a vector for bubonic plague. Well, they just use promiscuous people as the vector for this. Here's another one. 12 million of Americans received contaminated polio vaccine between 55 and 63. And again, I did this short order today. I couldn't find the one where they said that 100 plus million. This is just some article that only breaks down a little bit of it. 12 million Americans received it. It's much higher than that. Merck admits injecting cancer viruses, SV40 and others into millions. There's another big report on that. Simian virus 40, which again creates just hundreds of deadly, formerly rare cancers. Cancer's up over 2,000%. The U.S. has the highest rate of breast cancer. So that is some of the news on that front tonight. So there you go, Chavez. Instead of mumbling with Fidel Castro, because I'll say this. Again, I don't want anybody to be killed by this stuff. And I was unsure about Chavez 5, 6, 7 years ago when he was killing the North American, South American free trade deals. And I'm for Venezuela and other countries having sovereignty. But I don't like the seizure of businesses, what you've set up. It's just another form of tyranny. But did the U.S. give you cancer? No. If someone gave you cancer, it's the military-industrial complex New World Order that is trying to dominate all of our countries, but not the U.S. itself. The criminals running our country are not the U.S. Okay, let's continue on to the next issue. When radiation levels spiked massively from Fukushima 9 months ago, the fastest sea corridors bringing the radiation to North America within a month and a half had hit Alaska. And we had reports then of radiation levels going off the charts. What did the EPA do? Federal government? They just raised the level of what they said was safe. They said, you know what, this isotope's gone up, we'll just raise the level of what we say safe. Well, now seals with damaged flippers and hair loss are being killed by radiation from Fukushima plant, biologists warn. And they've done the test. The radiation level has gone up. Now, they first thought it was a virus, but they're not testing positive. That same wreckage of all the tsunamied cities and towns, that got carried out to sea. Water traveled in some cases in a month and a half to the coast of the U.S. and Canada and Alaska. The wreckage started hitting 3 weeks ago, and it's highly radioactive. All those houses, all those reactor parts, that's hitting the West Coast. Kids are dropping dead all over Japan, heart failure from the radiation, and our government's response, the Japanese government's response, is everything's fine. In '86, with Chernobyl in the Ukraine, the Russians said, don't drink milk, don't eat surface food for 6 months, we got to ship it in. All of Europe refused to eat the food. They shipped it in from America and other areas. For much lower radiation, this time they're saying just go ahead and take it. Everything is fine. It's going to be good for you. So there it is. Seals with damaged flippers and hair loss are being killed by radiation in Fukushima plant, biologists warn. Continuing here with more news. U.S. sends aircraft carriers through the Strait of Hormuz during Iran war games. Government debated provoking war by creating false flag attack at sea. And it breaks down previous reports in the New Yorker magazine and others that there was a plan to try to get Iran stirred up into being involved in some type of conflict. Incredible escalation there. Another Kurt Nimmo article, bailing out European banks. Bernanke and Fed deceive Congress. And we go over how they're basically urinating away our tax money. Bernanke told senators that the cartel had no intention of bailing out European banks. He told the lawmakers that repeatedly. We have links to it. Now we learn the Fed is indeed the business of bailing out European banks. It is secretly using a temporary U.S. dollar liquidity swap arrangement with the ECB and central banks of Canada, England, and Switzerland, and Japan. Finally tonight, the SOPA would destroy jobs, the economy, so why are unions supporting it? You've had the 80 inventors of the internet coming out 2 weeks ago saying it's an internet takeover. You've had huge boycotts taking place against GoDaddy. You've had the admission that it ends due process and allows selective kill switches. And the unions who supported NAFTA and GATT because their leadership's been bought off, that destroyed their jobs, are now doing this. They take your union funds and then they use it for the globalist. I'm not even against the idea of unions. I'm for people getting together and organizing. But the unions have been turned into vessels of the New World Order, and the system does not want you knowing that. Okay, we are going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to our guest about Wounded Knee that happened in 1890. Today is the anniversary, and a lot more. And we have a special broadcast tomorrow. But if you want to research more about the cancer viruses and the vaccines, we have a new report out at Infowars.com breaking this down, and the bisphenol A, and how this is a soft kill, slow kill holocaust where the government, by design, and major corporations are involved in poisoning you and your family. Sorry this information's so hardcore, but truth is stranger than fiction, and it's my job to tell the truth, no matter how out of control it is. I want to thank all of you that are subscribers to PrisonPlanet.tv. Don't forget we have a 15-day free trial running again because it's been so popular. If you're watching this later on the web, thank those that do subscribe because they financed your ability to see this information. So please spread this info on. That's the bare minimum folks can do. The power of the people virally spreading information is unstoppable. We'll be right back. It's Infowars Nightly News.
It was between 1972 and 73, but it was still a lot of prejudice around this area. My wife was sick, and I was trying to get some attention for her. Nobody came to check. They just left her there. Well, I believe I was left there because of the difference, me being black and her being white, and every time I would say something to the head nurse, she would get pretty upset. And then she finally called the Freeport Police Department, said I was harassing her. And I mean, I didn't know anything to do. Well, then Ron Paul come to my rescue. He just stepped in and went to work with my wife. And after he seen her, I'd say no more than 10 minutes later, she had a stillborn boy child. And he said, as far as the bill, he would take care of everything, which he did. I never got a bill from the hospital or anything. And he was a doctor of medicine, and that's what he was doing, was practicing medicine. And it didn't matter who and what and why. He was doing it because he think of one human being just as much as another one. He's just an honest man, and that's something we need now in this day and time. It's a lot of politics and no honesty. When you have honesty, well, people will try to do anything to blot you out, and that's what they will try to do to him, is blot him out, because he will be honest, and they need more like him.
Click here to donate to help get James' story broadcast on television.
We are back. It's Infowars Nightly News, and today, December 29th, 2011, is the anniversary of the December 29th, 1890 Wounded Knee Massacre. And of course, studying just basic history, the British concentration camp model, the Nazi concentration camp model, the Soviet Gulag model was based on the reservation model that was developed in this country. by the British early on, and then once this country became the United States, it was expanded, and that's what different colonial powers have done throughout history. They always dehumanize a group before they kill them or before they enslave them or cut off their resources. You've seen that with Arabs, Muslims, Persians. The mainstream media, it's acceptable to call them racial slings and terms, but nobody else, because that's the current group they want to wage war on. But also in the internal Homeland Security documents that we've gotten over the years, it's all about landowners and independent groups now, liberal, conservative, constitutionalist, anybody who wants to be left alone. Amish. These groups are all being targeted now because, as Russell Means pointed out 6 months ago or so in that special report we put out, welcome to the reservation. This model, this global gulag model, is what we're facing. And he's really an expert on Native American activist issues and one of the best known people out there. He's an author, poet, actor, musician, John Trudell, and he joins us on the anniversary of the Wounded Knee Massacre to break it down in context of what's happening today. And also on screen, we'll have his website for you if you want to learn more about this complex individual. John, thanks for coming on with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I mean, you heard my introduction, but where should we start with what's happening in the world today and tying it back to what happened at Wounded Knee?
Well, I think Wounded Knee is being replayed in the world today. It's just being replayed. The behavioral energy pattern of I call them the industrial ruling class. I think it's beyond capitalism and socialism and communism. To me, it's an industrial ruling class, and all these isms serve the needs of this industrial ruling class. And I think that the behavior pattern of this, historically speaking, of this industrial ruling class never really changes. What changes is the technology, the terminology, and the generations. So for the Wounded Knee Massacre, I think that forms of that massacre are taking place now today, but it's now the American citizenry, and the forms of the massacre now are more like psychological. I mean, this whole thing with the economic manipulation and the authoritarian emergence of the Patriot Act and all of these various mechanisms, controlling mechanisms, I think that they're psychologically massacring the American citizens mentally.
I agree with you. I mean, now the Bluecoats aren't coming after the Apache. They're coming after everybody with the NDAA, all these admissions that citizens will disappear into nowhere. I mean, this military-industrial complex is a predatory, cannibalistic system.
There's an industrial ruling class. The military-industrial complex, is a terminology that has emerged within our generation. But this military-industrial complex serves the industrial ruling class. The industrial ruling class is basically probably that 1% to 2% that control all the resources, and they, they basically remain hidden behind all of these other labels, whether it's the industrial ruling class or it's capitalism or communism or any of these things. And their plan, is to consume. It's to consume. It's like, in a way, because everything is about energy. Everything is about energy. And everything that goes on in this dimensional reality is about energy. And what this industrial ruling class is they're consuming the energy of the human beings. And they turn the human beings into citizens through their mining processes of their educational systems, their religious systems, their patriotic systems, their military systems, their economic systems. To me, these are all mining mechanisms, mine the energy of the human being. And so what I see going on now is, it's like the Dark Ages. If you go and look at medieval Europe, back in the Dark Ages, the energy pattern, the behavior pattern is the same now as it was then. It's just that the technology and the terminology. So however we're going to deal with this, we need to really start, I think, using our creative intelligence to see what's really going on beyond the emotional fears and paranoid perceptions of reality that they've imprinted us with.
Well, John, a few months ago, I was somewhat aware of your work, but one of my producers wanted to get you on, and I said, well, give me time because I want to be able to research and really find out what he's into. And now that I've looked at what you do more, I mean, I admire a lot of it because that's what you're doing is you're trying to shift paradigms